Hello and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Clerks II from 2006. I watched that earlier today. Obviously the follow-up to the original Clerks that came out in 1994 that I've already done a pod on. Clerks was quite a unique film experience. When it came out, I was in the right time at the right place. I was 21 years old. It was raw, it was funny, cheap looking in the best possible way. Felt like it had been made by people like me. And Kevin Smith, the director, captured something very specific in that film. It was with young people stuck in dead-end jobs, talking endlessly about pop culture and frustrated about, I guess, not knowing what's coming next for them. And then Clerks II came along in 2006. It was a pretty big deal at the time, I remember. And it brought back a lot of great memories for those of us that had enjoyed the original film, because it was such a blockbuster. I guess the question was always going to be, could they recreate that feeling 12 years later? When both the filmmaker and the audience have moved on a bit. So I remember enjoying Clerks 2 when it came out, but having a different take on it than the original, obviously, because it is a different film. So I thought it was worth a rewatch now to see how much things have changed for me. What happens in this one? Well, we're reunited with Dante and Randall, the guys, the main characters in the first film. They're still working at the same dead-end jobs. However, their world has changed a bit because the Quick Stop and the video store have burnt down. So it's a year after that occurs that they end up working at Mubi's fast food restaurant, which is a very McDonald's kind of looking chain restaurant. Dante, though, is approaching a major life change. He's engaged. He's about to move away to Florida from Jersey. And he's obviously maybe not ready for that. He still seems unsure about what he actually wants. Randall hasn't changed, though. He's just the same guy, just older. He's still cynical, really immature, argumentative, and obsessed with proving everyone else wrong. Hates the world, hates everyone except Dante. And with Dante leaving, Randall realizes he may lose his best friend. The other snag is that Dante and Randall's boss, played by Rosario Dawson, Dante is very close to her, and by close I mean extremely close. This comes out during the film, and that throws another spanner into the works. She doesn't want him to leave. She doesn't want him to marry the woman he's going to marry, and he's not sure if he's doing the right thing either. And then he finds out that he's going to become a father with Rosario Dawson. There's also an interlude with a donkey. There you go. It's got a bit of everything. Kevin Smith is the filmmaker, obviously. He really built his reputation with Clerks in 1994. And since then, he had found a fair bit more success. Mallrats came out in 95. It was a bit of a broader kind of studio comedy. It was less successful than Clerks at the time, but it has developed a cult following, and I've got good memories of Mallrats. Ben Affleck was in that, Shannon Doherty, a few other folks. Chasing Amy came out in 97. It was a much more mature film. Had a lot of buzz at the time. I remember that being a really good film, and haven't seen it since. Dogma in 99 was a much more ambitious film, basically a religious satire with some comedy and philosophy, all sorts of things. Alanis Morissette was in it. I think Damon and Affleck were in it. And then we had the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back film in 2001, which was celebrating those two characters that are so integral to Clerks and Clerks II. And they both come back into Clerks II as well. So even though this is a sequel to Clerks, there's a fair bit of difference. Like I said, the original one really captured the youth of the characters, their frustrations and uncertainty, and it felt in the moment and raw, felt real. It felt nearly like a doco. Clerks 2 is a lot more airbrushed. Kevin Smith had made 4 or 5 films in between. He was a well-respected filmmaker by then. And this one reflects that. The characters are getting older. They're fearful of change. They're having to accept responsibility and deal with that. And so that's really the difference. The original was about being stuck in the moment, and the sequel is about looking back at that moment, but also wary about the future and I guess worried about being an adult. And it's a fairly big ask to make a sequel to such a cult film that was filmed in black and white and was just so of that time. I did notice that Clerks 2, though, really belongs to its time of 2006. And some of the things that really screamed out 2006 to me were the fact that Randall spends a lot of time in a chat group responding to someone. This is before Facebook and Twitter. He's talking about surfing the web. No one's used those words for 20 years. Wearing backwards caps, again, that doesn't really happen so much now. Just the whole pre-smartphone internet culture. And there's some other things that I'll talk about that aren't as great, that thankfully we've left behind, or that we're getting better at leaving behind. But yeah, this captures that brief moment where people were discovering their online identity, but before everyone was permanently connected. And this is really now just as much a historical document as the original Clerks in '94, I think. I really enjoyed the battle between the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars that Randall gets into with his co-worker who's a religious guy and really into Lord of the Rings. And Randall, of course, is one of those characters who's completely unbearable, but occasionally makes great points. And I was really with him about hitting back at Lord of the Rings. I'd be definitely in the Star Wars camp. Although I did enjoy some of the other characters' criticism of the Star Wars prequels, because there's genuine truth underneath those jokes, especially about the Anakin Skywalker non-acting, I guess. They still land with me because the awkwardness of those performances has definitely become part of the conversation around those prequels. And I remember in the moment thinking, oh my God, what is going on here? A bit of a train wreck. Rosario Dawson, for me, was the heart of the film, even though the main protagonists are definitely Dante and Randall. She, at this time, was one of the most interesting and hot young actresses around in terms of charisma, acting proficiency. Just look at the things that she was in. I mean, she came out of the gates with 25th Hour in 2002 with Ed Norton and Phil Seymour Hoffman. Great performance in that. Shattered Glass with Hayden Christensen. That was a really interesting film. I remember that one. She was in some other big budget films that, Alexander, that didn't do so well. Sin City, though, was a great film from 2005. Really sort of a really different film, that one. That's one I'd like to revisit. She was in Rent as well the same year. I didn't see that, but and then Clerks II. She always brings a lot of confidence and warmth and maturity but charisma as well. And her character in this, Becky, feels like someone who's figured life out a hell of a lot more than Dante and Randall. And I did find her relationship with Dante interesting because Dante is the opposite of her. He's indecisive and anxious and waiting for someone else to make choices for him. They do say opposites attract, so maybe that's why that relationship happened. But on film, it is hard for me to imagine someone like her being interested in Dante. Um, but Dawson's performance does give the relationship some credibility, and there's some real sparks between the two. It's well directed and well acted by Rosario Dawson in particular. Uh, Randall, Jeff Anderson as Randall. He probably has the most lines in this film, just spouting off about all sorts of topics. Underneath it all, though, is really fear of change, and he's really worried, and he spells it out to Dante later on in the film, and his friendship with Dante really is the emotional core of this film, as it was in the first film as well. Jay and Silent Bob, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith obviously return as Jay and Silent Bob. These guys, to me, along with Rosario Dawson, are the best things about the film. I love the Silence of the Lambs homage that Jay rolls out a couple of times, and trust me, he goes all the way. If you know about that scene in Silence of the Lambs, where Buffalo Bill is doing his thing in front of the mirror, getting dressed up, and a few more, a bit more than that. Jay takes it all away. Geez, it's funny. I also love the rooftop scene where Becky and Dante, or Becky's teaching Dante how to dance for his wedding because he's worried about that. And Becky leans over the edge of the roof down to Jay and Silent Bob and asks for some beats so that they can dance. Jay thinks God is speaking to him, and it's it's very funny. He says a few other things that I won't repeat, but check out that scene. It's classic Kevin Smith comedy, where he mixes stupidity with genuine affection for these characters. And on that score, Rosario Dawson dancing, and the whole Jackson 5 musical number playing out is one of the film's best moments for me. It shows exactly why she became such a compelling screen presence. And that whole scene where everyone's getting into the music, there's the guy in the urinal shaking away in every sense of the word to the music. The guys in the restaurant are doing it up on the counter. It's just really well done. Also loved when Dante is driving to 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins. I've got a lot of memories of that song. Surprisingly emotional scene in the film where Dante is forced to confront that his old life is really ending. And I thought that the music choice there and his quiet reflection worked better than some of the bigger comedic scenes, actually. All right, let's get into it. The humour, has it aged well? This is probably where there's some pretty massive issues, I think. No matter, I mean, I'm not sure that dissecting a film like Clerks II is possible. I mean, it is what it is. It's irreverent. It's meant to be that way. It's not meant to be picked apart by juvenile, well, not juvenile, but nobody podcaster like me. But you just got to call out that a lot of the jokes and language in one particular part had aged badly by 2006, actually. I'm surprised they got them into the film. I'm talking about Randall's extended monologue, talking about racial slurs where he marches them all out. There's an extended scene there that's pretty tough to watch, actually. and it definitely answered the question for me: are some jokes timeless? Well, some definitely aren't. Um, some of Clerks 2 definitely feels less like comedy today, and more like a snapshot of early 2000s humor, when we were still working through some of this stuff. But yeah, I was pretty surprised actually to see this appearing in a film even as late as 2006. You wouldn't find this film wouldn't get made today, with those elements anyway. Uh, Other parts of the comedy definitely work. Randall's pop culture arguments with his co-workers and some of the customers were fantastic, like the Star Wars debate. The chemistry between the characters really works. The back and forth between Dante and Randall, they've known each other for so long, they can just sling mud at each other so well. Jay and Silent Bob, they definitely work. Their stuff is hilarious, especially Jay. I love that guy. And the performances really carry the day. But like I said, some of the things haven't aged as well. Even the extended donkey storyline, yeah, elements of it are funny, but it goes on way too long. I thought the jail sequence went on a bit too long and got way too earnest and serious for this kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, maybe that's just me. I'm definitely not the target audience now. I was probably the target audience back then. I've sort of grown up with this film, but I think it's definitely it hasn't aged as well as the original. So I think the first time when I watched this in 2006 or '07, whenever I got around to it, I found it funny. I don't think I found it as great as the first one. It was a familiarity and it brought back nostalgia, when I watched it in '06 or '07, and I love seeing these characters back on film. Like I said, especially Jay and Silent Bob, and I loved Rosario Dawson. Watching it now is obviously a lot more complicated. Everyone's more PC, including me. I often rail against elements of PC, but I do think the racial stuff, there's just no need for it. And I don't think there was any need for it in '06, honestly. I can kind of see maybe what Kevin Smith was aiming at, um, with Randall trying to misguidedly reclaim a certain term. But yeah, it was pretty much on the edge then. So there's still a lot of great moments, but the film to me felt less like a continuation and more like Kevin Smith trying to recreate a feeling from 1994. And it probably landed a hell of a lot better in 2006 than it does in 2026. Um, yeah, I don't know. This movie just feels a lot more deliberate, which is understandable. It's there's a lot more riding on this film. There's a lot more at stake than the original one. It's probably a really good date film with the right person, someone who's got a really good sense of humor, that's not easily offended, obviously. Don't do the Travis Bickle thing where you take your date along to a porno, or something equally likely to offend. Um, it's definitely better if your date already knows about Kevin Smith's style and about some of these characters. It's absolutely a hangover film though, because it's really easy to watch, with familiar characters, lots of jokes, isn't asking you anything really, just go along for the ride. Uh, I think if you grew up with the original and you still kind of like these characters, it could be a watch alone. It's probably better to watch it with someone else though, for the laughs. Um, so I think, summing up, it is a really interesting sequel because it shows what happens when a filmmaker returns to characters who represented youth 12 years later. He tries to recreate some of that and or move the characters along with where he's gotten to and where his main audience has gotten along to. But it definitely doesn't reach the heights of the original. But I know it's got genuine affection for folks who love these characters. Rosario Dawson gives the film a surprising boost. Dante, Kevin O'Halloran, his acting still isn't fantastic, if I'm honest. Dante is a bit of a weak point as the film goes along. I did kind of get a little bit annoyed with him always going back on what he says, just like he did in the first one. Excuse me, but that's maybe more the character. Jeff Anderson's still true to form as Randall. But I do think maybe Kevin Smith's greatest strength is his ability to write characters who can talk endlessly about anything and capture that moment in the culture. That's still here. But maybe this film also shows that some cultural moments shouldn't be recreated. So this one definitely is less a timeless comedy and more a snapshot of that very specific moment in time. The last days, I guess, before the internet changed everything. So yeah, it's definitely flawed. Worth a watch if you remember the first one, but it's nowhere near as ambitious as Chasing Amy or Dogma, which I would like to re-watch as well. But it is an interesting time capsule of that early 2000s pre and sort of early internet culture. And it does represent some of the uncomfortable process of growing up. So check it out. You might have a hard time finding it. I actually watched it on a DVD, so I can't recall seeing it on a streaming platform, but I'm sure it is there somewhere. All right, that's Clerks II from 2006. Thanks as always for listening. See you next time.